Hi, welcome back, fourth graders at Enterprise. This is Mrs. Greenwood, and welcome to Virginia History Story Town. This will be a storytelling, just reviewing what we have learned throughout this school year. Last week we talked about Jamestown, and today we will be talking about the life in colonial Virginia. So, three things we'll be focusing on today. First, economy of colonial Virginia and different types of settlements that happened there, and then culture and customs of a colonial Virginia life. Okay, thank you. Let's get started. First, economy. We cannot forget about the most important term, which is cash crop. Does anybody remember what that was? So think about it. Okay, let's get back together. Cash crop is something that farmers grow not to eat, not to consume for themselves, but to sell, to make money. So name one most important cash crop during colonial Virginia. Do you guys remember? I give you a second. All right, turn around and tell your mom and dad or somebody in your family that, Mom, Dad, do you know what the most important cash crop in colonial Virginia was? Can you please go ahead and share? Great job. Thank you for doing that. Of course, tobacco. Tobacco was their most important cash crop. And that was a money maker because turns out the people in England loved tobacco. So Virginia people started growing more and more tobacco, and tobacco farming grew and grew. And that leads to what? Can someone think of cause and effect? Because tobacco farming takes a lot of labor. It's not an easy thing to do. You cannot do it by one person. You cannot do it with two people. You cannot even do it with one family. You needed a lot of people to provide labor, hard work. So that led to slavery in Virginia. So the Portuguese sailors, do you remember from last week, had to go to Africa and capture African men and women, sometimes even children, and brought them over to Virginia, and they were sold at the slave market. And they were working at the many different plantations, growing tobaccos, picking cottons, and working in the fields, and doing all kinds of things for their masters. Kind of terrible, isn't it? Now let's talk about what was the moneymaker. How did colonial Virginia people gain their wealth? Through what? Through computer technology? What do you think? That's right. Agriculture. Agriculture is a fancy word for what? You tell me. That's right, for farming. Agriculture means farming and also includes raising livestock, animals, okay? Let's talk about different types of economic activities that happen in colonial Virginia. Let's talk about money first. Do you think there were money in paper bills and coins such during colonial Virginia? Think about it. Yes, there were, but not a lot. Only the very few rich plantation owners would have money in paper bills or coins. Then what was the way that most of the colonial Virginia people participated in their economic activities? Can you think about it? It starts with the letter B. What is it? Bartering. Barter, that's right. Now, let's think about what bartering means. What does it mean? Bartering means you are exchanging, trading things with other people. So let's say I grew corn and somebody else grow tobacco, and we'll meet at the market, and I will show up with a basket full of my corn, and then you will show up with a basket full of your tobacco, and then we will exchange. Okay, that would be bartering with no money involved. If there's money involved, it's not bartering anymore. That would be purchasing. Okay, all right. So bartering was the main ways of people participating in economic activities during colonial Virginia. What was other things? Can you name some? What about I'm a farmer and I'm poor and I don't even have money to go to the store and buy a bag of seeds in springtime to grow my crop? What would I do then? It starts with letter C. That's right, credit. That means I buy it now, bring the items now, and I'll pay later. So how does that work? Can you turn around and discuss with your family? Or ask your family, ask your mom and dad, hey mom, dad, do you use credit right now? Do you think people still use credit system right now? Yes, we do. I mean, for myself, I use credit card all the time, even to this day. What about banks? Do you think they had banks during colonial Virginia? Think about it. The answer is no. They did not have banks during colonial Virginia. Banks were not invented then. Not yet. Let's talk about settlements. There are 3 different groups of settlements that happen in colonial Virginia. Now, I'll give you a minute. I'll give you a second to think about it. What were those 3 groups who settled in Virginia? Throughout Virginia. First, who were already living here when the English settlers came here? That's right, American Indians, Native Americans. And then who came along? The English settlers. And then later, when the Jamestown was settled and the Jamestown settlement was going on, different people from different parts of the Europe started coming in. Especially the Scottish from Scotland, Irish from Ireland, and Germans from Germany came to Virginia. And they eventually spread out and then moved to different parts of Virginia. And the especially Scottish and Irish and German immigrants ended up settling in a place called Shenandoah Valley. It's a beautiful place. I go there twice a year, every spring and every fall. And every spring I drive up there to see the spring flowers bloom. And every fall I drive up there again to see the autumn leaves turning into beautiful colors. So that's my favorite thing to do around the Shenandoah Valley. So if you go to Shenandoah, you can still see lots of Scottish and Irish and German descendants who live there right now, even to this day. All right. And what would be the migration route? We talked about it. Shenandoah Valley is mountains and mountains. How do they cross over to go to the other side? Do you guys remember? What was the name of the migration route? That happened to be a little narrow pathway, a gap that allowed Scottish, Irish, and German people to migrate into in different parts of Virginia. What is that gap called? It's called Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, okay? And let's talk about culture and customs. When people move, this is what it looks like. When people are moving to different areas, of course they take their family members and their animals and their belongings with them. But something else also follows them. Something we cannot see, invisible, called culture and customs. It's the way they live. It's the kind of music they listen to, the kind of dance they do, the kind of holidays they celebrate, and the kind of religions they follow. And these culture and customs are reflected upon their architecture, the way they build things. So can you name some of the 3 things that reflect their culture and customs in architecture? 3 things. I'll give you first one. Homes, that's right. Barns, and what else? Churches. So if you go to any new town, just by looking around and looking at the way homes are built and barns are built and churches are built, you can pretty much tell, oh, these people, their ancestors must have moved from Scotland, Ireland, England, Germany, France, Italy, like that. And there's another way to tell. It's the way they name the places. Let me give you an example. Let's say Richmond versus Manassas, or Jamestown, Yorktown versus Roanoke. Now, which people named their new town Richmond or Jamestown or Yorktown? Native Americans or the English settlers? That's right. So Richmond, Jamestown, Yorktown, those names were created by English settlers. And what about Manassas, Roanoke, and those places would have been named by Native Americans. And let's talk about slaves' lives. What kind of life do you think they had? That's right, they're slaves. So their lives were very, very harsh, and it was not good life. Do you know if the parents were slaves and the babies are born, or the baby automatically becomes a slave as well, and they become part of the master's property? Horrible, isn't it? Let's talk about white people who lived in colonial Virginia. Were they all rich? Were they all poor? Think about it. Okay, let's get together. Most white people owned small farms or ran small businesses or shops. And only the very, very few rich white people were plantation owners. Well, let's talk about slaves. Do slaves have any rights? Rights to vote, rights to education, and things like that? What do you think? No, slaves did not have any rights at all. No rights at all. African Americans, were all African Americans who lived in colonial Virginia, they were all slaves? Do you think so? Nope. Some African Americans arrived not as slaves. They were free African Americans. Now, those people could own land and own farms and own business and shops, but they could not have rights either. So only basically white people, white men had the rights if you lived in colonial Virginia. Okay, let's talk about their food. What kind of food did they eat? Do you think they had Walmart and grocery stores and fancy restaurants or McDonald's drive-through? No. Their food choices were very, very limited, and they could only eat the things they grew, all right? So they will eat meat and produce provided by the local people only. What about housing? Let's talk about their houses. Right here, this picture shows what the homes looked like during colonial Virginia. Okay? What can you say about this type of homes? This was a one-room house with a dirt floor. And this is a picture of barn. This is a picture of their church. Again, these structures, architectural structures, will tell you their culture and customs. How about clothing? What kind of clothes do you think they wore? Do you think they had fancy department stores, and Potomac Mills, and Macy's, and JCPenney's? No. They had to make their own clothes, and women would be in charge of making clothes for their families. So what kind of materials did they use? Yes, whatever they could get from the nature or in their environment. So they mainly used cotton, wool, and leather, the cowhides. Okay. Let's talk about what happened to Jamestown. Was Jamestown the capital of Virginia all the time, permanently? This is a picture that shows that Jamestown burned. Majority of Jamestown burnt. And then not only that, there were other problems. Do you remember from last week that they made a mistake on picking the Jamestown site? What were the problems? Let's review them. First, they thought they had a fresh supply of water. They didn't. Why? Because they settled too close to the ocean, and the salt water started seeping in and contaminated their drinking water, and that made people sick. And led them to having diseases. Okay, and also it was too close to the coastline, so which made enemies very easy to attack the Jamestown, and that's what happened to Jamestown. All right, so they had to move the capital from Jamestown to where? Does anyone remember? So the first capital was Jamestown around the James River, and they moved to Williamsburg. And later on, next week, we'll be talking about it. And Williamsburg was not working out well either. So they ended up moving all the way to inland, more to a more central location. And what is the name of capital right now? Does anyone remember? The capital of Virginia right now, at this moment. That's right, Richmond. Okay, boys and girls, there's one more card for me to share with you. And this map shows the 13 original colonies that were located through mainly through the East Coast. Okay, our country's name is the United States of America. And how many states are united? How many? That's right, 50 states are united. But it was not like that from the beginning. In the beginning, our country only started with 13 original colonies. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for staying with me. I hope you enjoyed my storytelling. Today's topic was the life in colonial Virginia. Please don't forget to go to Thursday, learning menu on Thursday, and try some different activities. Go to SOL Pass, and it will lead you to study guide. Please review the study guides a couple more times, and then pick and choose. There are many wonderful activities there. All right, we'll see you next week. I look forward to meeting you all again. And the next week we'll be talking about American Revolutionary War. Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye.